everybody. Welcome to Artist Alchemy again, where we talk to creative people from lots of different industries. My name is Steph, and I'm a fantasy photographer from Lincoln in the UK.
And I'm John Cruz. I am a portrait photographer in Philadelphia in the United States.
And we've got our guests on today. If you want to introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Yeah, I'll go first. Hey, I'm Jazz. I'm a musician from London.
Hey, I'm Scott. I'm also a musician, well, drummer from, based in London. Jazz and I play in a band together called Modern Guilt.
Who, by the way, are amazing.
Yeah, I was earlier today. I was listening to a couple of your songs, and I really want to get into you have a very unique style that sounds like it's out of time from here. So I'd love to get into your influences because it feels very. I know, jumping right all over the place, but you can hear some 60s rock, but I can also hear some early 90s influences and things like that. So I would love to get where did you start to coalesce around your sound and you said, okay, this is us, this speaks to us?
I mean, it's a great question. And look, we're creatives and we're musicians, so we love nothing more than talking at length about ourselves and what it is that we do. I think we came from a really unique position because we started the band from nothing. So it wasn't that some of us had a set of songs or a style that we wanted to put a band together around and then pursue a project. We had no idea what we were going to play. We basically met by chance. Pulled in a couple of musicians. Basically, we met because Scott sat down next to me in a pub and thought I was someone I'm not.
Oh, how funny.
Yeah.
Thought he was famous, but turns out he wasn't.
or he was from the past, and now it's going to be this is a manifestation of fame. Are you a famous musician? I can be.
Yeah, I'll be anyone you want if there's money in
it. So Scott, you went over to Jazz and said, hi, I don't know who you thought he was. And then he was like, no, but shall we start a band together?
I didn't say that to him. I wasn't weird and oh my God, you're famous, I need to meet you. I recognized him somewhere else. Anyway, we had been chatting that night and talking about music. And yeah, seemed to kind of enjoy the same bands and styles and things like that. And I had been, at a time I was I wanted to start a new project, I guess. So I think maybe the week later, after me and Jazz had spoken, a few times, I brought along a friend, Andreas, to meet Jazz, who became our guitarist, and that the three of us were kind of the start of what became Modern Guilt as the band and the project. So we're kind of the core three that started it. Essentially, we spent a few months. First of all, we set up a bit of a jam in a rehearsal room together. And as Jess said, there was no material pre-planned or pre-written. We didn't kind of know what style we would go for or become. We thought, yeah, let's just keep this a bit of an open book. Go ahead. The rehearsal was pretty terrible, to be honest. But the very end, the last 10 minutes, I think we got this idea together, which became our first single called Hoping for the Hoping. And that had that kind of garage rock, kind of retro, bit indie vibe, I guess, and it became a blueprint for our sound moving forward. And we thought, right, that's the kind of route and direction we can kind of base our sound from, and we kind of developed from there, I guess.
Where did the kind of influence come from to get that kind of end product of your first song?
Oh, because I think when we first met, we kind of sat down and did the sort of musical Venn diagram, which was what do you like, what do you listen to, where is there overlap, are we kind of working off the same page? And some of the the notes that you picked up on, John, were very much what we discussed. There was all the classic, the Rolling Stones, the Doors, through, and then 90s, whether it was Brian Jonestown Massacre through to Britpop, which is a very specific, I'm not sure how much you know about, it was a very specific time in British music. It's actually the era that inspired Scott to become a drummer.
Oh wow.
Oh wow.
But it was through the 90s, it was British guitar music. And then throwing it, Andreas is Swedish, and so he had loads of other sort of Swedish bands that he was influenced by. And then bands like Black Rebel Motorcycle Club, The Hives. And so there was a lot of overlap. And then there's also a lot of other stuff which we each individually bring in as like our unique take on it, whether it's like Motown, soul, disco. And Andreas, who couldn't be here tonight, is a huge fan of like metal and much heavier music as well.
Well,
So
it's funny you mentioned disco because I heard an interview with Dave Grohl recently, and he was talking about most of his drum beats when he was with Nirvana were disco drum beats, but he just played at a little bit different pace. But he said, I stole all of those drum beats from disco. He said, because they had such a bass line that you could play with. And he said, that's where I got a lot of that from.
Yeah,
He said,
like you know, parts of the drum kit, like particularly hi-hats and, you know, higher in the mix, I guess. So, you know, you go back to disco and Motown and that particular symbol is quite high. You get a lot of the rhythm from there. So yeah, it makes sense.
yeah, and I think fundamentally what it came down to is we wanted to make stuff that we like listening to.
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
And so I think this is kind of how we developed the style, which was based off that first rehearsal. Once we found that groove, we were like, no, this is really enjoyable. It's upbeat. It's the sort of, I love music where you put it on, you're walking down the street and it gives you a little bit of a swagger.
Yeah.
Kind of,
Yeah.
you're feeling yourself. You're like,
Yeah.
I'm in the world. This is great. It's like, it's cinematic. It's like, is it the beginning of a heist movie? Is it like a Western? There is a real cinematic feeling behind it.
I
Yeah.
was just thinking it's like
Actually,
an old Apple, like the old iPod commercials where they put it in and then like the world changes as they're strutting down New York City. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
and I
So
kind of felt like, sorry, when you
no,
guys
go, Steph, please.
saw you guys perform, like you almost took on a different persona once you got on stage, and I was like, oh, and it was really cool to see though. Like you guys came alive. It was awesome to watch. It was really cool.
Yeah, thanks.
Sorry, carry on anyway.
Oh, thank you. I honestly, I've completely blanked on what I was talking about.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
No, it's
Like the music you like to listen to. And I can imagine that must be in the ideal world, you guys are going to be playing this for the next 20, 30 years. Like, you better like it because like that's what people are going to expect you to play, you know?
Yeah. And I think the blend, you know, we're never shy about who we're influenced by, you know, and we never set out pretending that we're trying to do something that no one's ever done before. It's just about playing stuff that really hits that sweet spot where we're listening back to it and going, have we stolen this? And then like going back through like everything that we might have been influenced by and going, no, actually, you can hear bits of that and bits of that, but no, this might just be ours.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when we play or like songs or people come and see us and, you know, they take different references as well, which, you know, sometimes pretty interesting, like stuff that we haven't thought about. So there's yeah, quite a variety. But
It's very cool. And how did you come up with the name Modern Guilt? Like, how did that come about?
wow, how long have you got?
ABBA was taken.
Does it have any symbolic reasoning behind it?
You go ahead, Jazz. You
Okay.
explain this one well.
we deliberated for a long time on this because of, you know, it's the brand, isn't it? It's what you're going to be, you know, known by, and it's going to be on all the artwork. It's going to be on all the posters, and for me, I wanted it to mean a whole bunch of different things. Like with a lot of what we do, and like what Scott said, and John, what you noticed about the different references, I wanted people to approach anything that we did and be able to pull something very personal out for them.
Yeah.
Also, I wanted to be able to give really glib answers to certain things. So straight off the bat, there's a fantastic album by Beck called Modern Guilt. So there's that as like a glib answer without having to go into any detail about what's really behind it. So we could say that, but truthfully, what is underneath it is two core things. One of them is that there's, as the sort of world has sort of moved forward, there are so many new ways of basically feeling awful. There are so many new ways of getting things wrong and making, feeling guilt, in different ways, basically different ways of being debauched and chasing hedonism and then feeling the repercussions of that.
Yeah.
And then the other thing was, with 5 white blokes playing rock and roll. In music, I'm not sure if there's anything that's been done more.
Yeah. That's very true. That's very true. And had you guys, obviously you say you're musicians and stuff, had you guys been in a band before, or had it all been like individual kind of performing and things like that?
Yeah, no, I've been in band. I've known Andreas for quite a while, so myself and him have played together in quite a few bands over the years. So yeah, I've always, since I think at the age of 12 or 13 when I started playing drums, I've
Wow.
just
Okay.
like straight away, like, whether it was my first group of friends that had, one took up the guitar, I took up the drums, someone tried to sing, we just like, and that's modern guilt. We no, yeah, it's like, as I say, when it was like 12, 13, got into a band with a couple of friends, and then over the years it gets a bit more serious, and hopefully the bands get better, whatever. But yeah, always played.
Very cool. And what about you, Jazz?
Yeah, I mean, essentially what it came down to is I thought musicians were about the coolest people around, and I had I had a desperate desire to be cool. So as a teenager, I was like, I'll give it a go. And then I sort of taught myself how to play guitar, started playing with people, like whether it was just writing with them or putting together bands, and played in loads of different setups with people in loads of different ways. But a lot of the problem was that very few people I knew could sing. So I ended up trying to sing and ended up just naturally gravitating towards that. Also, just like a sort of massive ego, which is like, great, I'm going to stand at the front. Yeah. So I ended up singing, and because primarily I used to think of myself as a writer. I was a songwriter.
Okay.
Because for me, the words and the lyrics were always super important. And I just never quite settled on a particular style that conveyed that in the way that I wanted to convey it. So I moved around a lot, and then I took a long time out of playing music. Just really through like resentment, I lost a record deal in my early 20s, and
You don't
then
look much
was,
older than your early 20s now.
thank you, but I'm not, for entertainment purposes. I'm a fresh-faced 25, but it was just that it was just one of those things. It didn't really materialize, and I just got really disillusioned with it, and I stepped out. And also at that point, loads of the people I knew went and got real jobs and like moved on, and like their lives got busy, and it wasn't just a group of us playing music in a garage.
Yeah.
And so by the time I met Scott, it was this weird aligning of planets, because Scott had just finished playing in a project that he'd been working on. I had just finished playing for someone else. So we were both suddenly completely musically unattached. So it was kind of the perfect time for us to consider doing something. And now here we are.
Amazing. And how long ago was that when you first guys got together?
Oh, what's difficult is the chronology was so thrown out by COVID.
Ah, okay.
So
Yeah,
it was probably around my standard thing, and Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, but we probably met about 7 or 8 months before COVID.
Wow.
And then started putting it all together. And by the time we started fleshing it out, and then we brought in the rest of the band, and we got a phenomenal keys player, and brought in the bassist, and really started to figure out how we were going to build the sound in a much bigger way. We then played our first proper show under, as Modern Guilt February the 26th before COVID hit.
February 26th. Yeah, but yeah, 2020, wasn't it?
Yeah. And like 10 days later, social distancing came in and canned all the gigs, and then and then it was lockdown, and that was it.
What did you guys do over lockdown then? When obviously you've just put loads of hard work into this, and now you've all been locked down, and it's for like 2 years. So how do you guys come back from that?
I'm pretty sure, if I remember right, the March, so a few weeks into lockdown, we originally had our first studio days booked, which was, as I say, like the first single and a few other tracks scheduled to record, but all the studios were closed. So between myself, Jazz, and Andreas, we'd, you know, every couple of days we'd have Zoom calls like this, and you know, just kind of sat with a guitar or things over video calls, or be sending each other like you know, music projects, things that we worked on, or any new ideas, and we just try and somehow like write them over these video calls for quite a few months. And then I can't remember how long, after a few months later, maybe June, if I remember right, of that year, was when the studios were allowed to reopen, because it was, you know, work. And yeah, we recorded the first tracks then, which I think we released in September of 2020. So we just had to do a lot of stuff remotely. And the main thing for us is I suppose from when we met until we did that first gig, was we were building up, you know, enough music to play a set. And we knew instantly, like when we do that first show and we announce ourselves, we just wanted to keep the ball rolling. It was really important for us to make sure we were continuously writing somehow, and it just had to be over, you know, video calls and things, but we still kept productive. Yeah,
that in itself was but in itself really difficult. I mean, I don't know how you guys find it, and maybe photography is slightly different discipline, but we had built the idea of what we were going to do together in a room.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, because like every band has their own writing process, right? But like, and some of it is like the musical tracks come first, and then the lyrics get overlaid, and sometimes it's a poem, and then like we got to figure out. But it's a collaborative exercise for that all to come together, and there's juice in the room that you probably can't get by passing audio files back and forth. And it's just like, all right, like I could totally see where you're just like, I don't know where you're going with this. And it's like, well, now we have to have a call, because then I have to ask you about it, because I don't feel this, but like I hear something in here. But like, it's not that, oh no, what if I did it this way? Like there's no immediacy to the organic nature of creation. So like, so it sounds like you had a couple months where you were creating and what you were trying to figure out your process. Then that totally got disrupted. And then you got back to like, have you found like what is your ideal process? Or are you still working that out?
So for now, what it feels like, and this might change and it might evolve, but it really feels like the core, the spine of every song that we write, the arrangement, the musical arrangement, we piece together between the three of us in a room. Because as we play it over and over again, we add bits, and you know, Scott will pitch in and say, hey, let's try it like this, or let's change the tempo, or how about we, you know, scrap that and bring in this middle eight here, or whatever it might be. And then we run it through, we see how it sounds. And by the end of a couple of hours of that, we have a fairly structured bass line, as it not a figurative bass line, but like a bass line, spine to the, yeah. And then what happens is, because once I write a melody to an arrangement, I can't unpick it. I really struggle to rewrite a melody to that arrangement, because in my head I've just got the old melody. So I often hold off on writing melodies until that's done. Okay. And then what happens is I warble nonsense into a microphone for about an hour in the room.
I love that.
And then we unpick it, and we go, that's really nice, that's really nice, that's god awful, I don't even know what you're saying.
Are you looking for like tonal changes to say, okay, I like the way I like the way the sound of my voice pivots from here to here, and like, okay, what language can I use in order to accentuate that? Is that how you're processing this?
Yeah, so a lot of it is about that. A lot of it is about the delivery of a vocal melody over a particular arrangement. And sometimes I'll have a couple of options. So we'll run the track on a loop and I will do each of the alternatives back to back. And then I'll just sit with them and I'll see what sounds best. And then from that, it's almost like I'm writing, I can't remember what they call it when you're writing poetry, but it's just like the beat of the words
Like the
without
meter,
any
like
yeah, perfect. Yeah, the meter. So I'm just writing out a meter. I've got no idea what the song's going to be about because so much of the feeling of the song is built as a byproduct of the arrangement and the melody. And so once I start writing, about halfway through, I figure out what it means.
That's such a cool process, because like when you think about like any type of art, and Steph and I've talked about this before, right? Art can be anything, but the one thing it has to do is evoke emotion in somebody else, whatever that is. And for you, you are literally like when you put your music into the world, it speaks to certain people in a certain way and they feel a certain way. For you, you're literally putting words to that feeling because the music is now set. And now you're saying, okay, how does that make me feel? And now let me write lyrics that express how I feel about this music. And it's kind of like a meta construction of your, that's really interesting. I've never heard of that before.
Oh, I've never felt so unique.
That's
and
very
a lot.
cool, though.
Thank you. And a lot of it is also observational. So like I will just have an image of something. I mean, there's references in songs to some members of the band. Just because they've pitched up to rehearsal wearing something, looking in a certain way. Then there's in one of our tracks, Double Denim, Scott wears a lot of double denim.
It's a classic.
And I was like, I'm gonna write a song about this. This is great. And then he described he was playing, I can't remember, we were listening back to I think an early demo of something. So
sorry, carry on where you were.
Technical difficulties aside, we can get back into it. And I honestly don't remember where we were.
I do. We were talking about crafting songs, and I was talking about. Don't worry, it was me talking about me. So obviously I remember. Massive ego. So it was. I used a lot of observation, and in the song Double Denim, we were listening to old demos, and Scott, there's a line in there which I used the phrase thunder snare, because Scott was describing his snare drum and using a whole bunch of ways to describe it, and he said it's like thunder.
Okay,
that's cool.
And I just went, I'm putting that in. It fits, and I'm putting it in. So I just basically all I do is I look around at stuff and nick it.
Yeah. Take inspiration from kind of every day.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
And then pass it off as my own.
Well, it is your own. So if there's a little Jazz or a little Scott listening now who's like 15, 14, 17, I don't know, and they're like, okay, but like we've started a band, but how do we get our first gig? So you guys have met randomly in the pub, you've put loads of work in, lockdown's not stopped you either, and you're like, right, we are ready to go. We've got these really awesome songs and we're ready to play them. How did you go about getting your first gig? What did you do?
I suppose looking around your local town or scene, for the right venues that put on, bands or acts that, fit your vibe. If you go and speak to the venues, they'll maybe be able to put you in touch with promoters that maybe work in there or elsewhere. So it's just about getting connected with people in the local area, and they'll, hopefully help you expand and network around the scene. And, if it starts in your town, then you might jump on the bill with a band that's in another town or city, and then you can kind of swap shows and play together and just kind of grow from there, I suppose.
And do you have to kind of audition or no? And like try out for it before a venue says you can go, or no?
Not like an X Factor type of thing, but
no.
which would be cool. I suppose some might well, a lot of times if you're brand new, they'll maybe ask for demos or a link to a video or a live performance on YouTube or SoundCloud and stuff like that, so they can see what you're about.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that, because like Steph and I have talked about this before, because like with the technology that exists now, the barrier to entry to get your art in front of people is different than it was 20 years ago. Like, we're not radio hosts and now we have a podcast. We just decided one day we wanted one. Like, have you seen with SoundCloud and YouTube and TikTok, like, are you getting your music in front of different people faster now, or is it because everyone has that low barrier to entry? You have to navigate through a bunch of shit before they get to like your stuff.
I think so. Firstly, I think it's amazing that it's so accessible for people who they might not, maybe back in the day you might have had to have, contacts or known where to go, or have, had enough friends to make a band, or enough friends that like the same music that you like to make a band, to put it out, to find an audience local to you, especially if you're not from like a major sprawling city like London. So now you can, be on an island with 4 other people. You can make something in your bedroom and you can put it out there, and you can find listeners all over the world, which is incredible.
Yeah.
It also means that there's so much out there.
Mm-hmm.
There is so much out there, and that in itself can be quite overwhelming. So it's a blessing and also a bit of an obstacle, I think, for kind of trying to be seen in and amongst all the incredibly talented offerings that people bring to the table. And then you've got the fact that music shifts and trends, and they're constantly evolving and moving, and what you make one year might be really popular and people are really looking for it, and then it suddenly goes. And then it's evolved into something else which you might not do, or you might not like making. So it's quite turbulent. There's a lot of currents, there's a lot of undercurrents moving through, and the truth is there's always going to be someone that's better than you.
And
that can go with any art form, I think, though. There's always going to be someone's better, but there's always going to be a lot of people who...
It depends. I don't feel that way at all about myself.
It's what?
No,
John, that's the energy we need.
No, I'm just teasing. But because you hear this sometimes with bands, like it's the first album to catch a fire, and then they got to figure, they got to figure out their sophomore record. But then there's other bands, it's like it's the 3rd album, and then people go back and discover their catalog, and it's like, oh, and like I hear what you're saying. Like, there is a wave, and you catch the moment, and once you catch the moment, then you got to figure out what to do with it. And like, where do you guys see yourself on the wave right now? Are you like, are you coming to the crest, or are you still like trying to figure out, like, are you still like in the ocean kind of navigating, like, which one do we want to jump on?
I think we keep getting better and better. It's just, I think, just keep playing the shows, the audiences, like the fans who are not our friends, or my mum. There's more and more people coming to
Thanks,
shows.
Linda.
Yeah. Anyway, and yeah, like our new tracks, the songwriting, I think, is just getting better and better, and it's exciting to see what we're going to be doing next. Like, we've got quite a lot lined up, so just want to keep.
Can you tell us about that? Like, what's the big goal? If you're able to, of course, if it's not like top secret.
To be interviewed on bigger shows than ours, like, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Not at all. I mean, like, I love this stuff, because also, like, it's if it's suddenly like, John, if you were like, hey, this is a big old TV setup, all these people are watching, I'd panic. I'd be like, I've got nothing to say, I don't know what I'm doing, and the running joke in the band is I can't sing. So why on earth am I here? So no, this is great for me. I don't know if I can say that there's one overarching goal. There's a series of markers that I would love to hit, if possible. And some of them are like quite quantifiable, and some of them are a bit more amorphous, and some of them are really achievable, and I could do if I just, put in some effort.
Is there a venue? Is there a venue like? Is there? I don't know much about the London music scene, but is there a venue you just go like? I'm gonna have to control my emotions if we book a gig in there. Like it's just gonna be one of those places. Is there like a place like that you have in your mind?
There's a venue in Camden called Coco that I actually played there a few times with previous bands, but it's had a recent refurbishment and it's such a great venue. I think that or Brixton Academy is legendary as well. It's a bit bigger. You know, those two are pretty famous within London, I guess. But just when you were just sort of talking a minute ago about, you know, stuff we love to do, like I think as well to add, years and years ago before internet or the access of being able to release your own the internet, being able to,
before internet. You're giving away trade secrets here, Scott. You're a young man.
It's like it's so hard to get your music out there, or you know, when I've been in bands with a record label and things, they holding, you know, tracks and stuff back that you want to get released. And what we're doing just now, and we said from the start, has been able to, certainly for now, can kind of control our own destiny. And you know, we're regularly releasing new tracks, which for me that's exciting and great, and just have the freedom to do that with, I think, you know, artists on, you know, big labels sometimes might get, you know, held back or shelved albums that they've recorded and things like that. So
yeah, can you talk a little bit more about that process? Like, because like the old music model was you create an album and your record label will decide this one's going to be the single. But the single might be good for radio play, but it doesn't represent the album. It's like it may stand out on its own, but like in your model, like you can release drips and drabs that give people an entire like view of this is what this album's going to feel like once you experience the whole thing. Like, so how do you navigate, like, how do you release songs and say, like, I want to get this one in front of this one? Like, does that make any sense? Like it seems like the process is different now.
We've usually every few months gone to the studio with Mikey, who's been our producer for the last few years, great guy, and we've been in the studio a few days and recorded a batch of songs. And it's kind of just like you say for us, like there are the songs that you think are a bit more radio friendly or a bit catchier for the general public to, you know, easy to listen to. So we've kind of got a bit of that, but then when it's come to like putting together an EP, something that we're looking into just now for a few months' time, it's, you know, about the order of the tracks and things like that, and even the order of how we release them and things like that. So there's a lot that goes into it. It's not just, oh, this was recorded, so let's release it.
I've always been fascinated by the construction of an album, because like I'm somebody when I hear a new artist, like I don't want to hear all the singles. Like I want to hear the album. I want to hear how they meant for it to be heard as if it were on an actual record. Like I want to go through the ebbs and flows of the emotions that way. How do you, like, when you're crafting songs individually and you start to say, okay, this is how we're going to put the chapters together to make this book? Like, what is that process like? Is that just the same as your collaborative songwriting process? Like, how do you think through that?
Because I think part of the benefit of what we've done in terms of writing EP and releasing EPs rather than a full-length LP is, like we said, we had no idea what the hell we were going to sound like. So saying, hey, look, here's 5 tracks, here's a 6-track EP, kind of goes, okay, so now that's out in the world, let's see how it goes, and let's see how it sits with us over time. Because what's really important for us, I think, as musicians, is you have to wave goodbye. You have to put it out there, stop tinkering with it, and just like kind of let it brew. Because otherwise, like every time we get near to a release, I panic. I'm like, nah, no, we got to change that. That could be better. That could be better. That could be better. There comes a point you've got to let it go and just let it sail down the river. Then we sit on that, and in the interim, we pick up everything else we've got and we discard a huge amount because we can. At the moment, we're not under any pressure to hit certain quotas, so we can be really, really selective about what we're going to do. But it allows us, releasing these slightly shorter EPs, it means that our sound can change over 10 tracks, over 2 EPs, a lot more extensively than it could throughout just a single album.
Right.
And this EP that we're finishing off and we're going to release will really represent a shift in sound and tone and approach. So it's really quite freeing to be able to do that. And the way we construct it is usually there's sort of 2 core tracks which we have got, which weren't on any of our previous releases, and they signify whether it is a particular tone or a particular style of the way that we've built the track, something completely different from our first release. And we think, great, let's build it around this. And then everything else that we're writing, we kind of sift through it and we go, does this sit well with that? And not just like, you know, does it play nice, but does it evolve on it? Does it take these like motifs? Does it take these ideas, whether it is even like lyrically or whether it's like drum patterns, whether it's a keys sound? Are we just pushing it and seeing how far we can get away from that kind of central spine that we're building it around? Because I think a huge amount of it is just us trying to investigate what we can do.
Yeah.
And what we like.
I think as well, it goes into when we're constructing live sets, we've got quite a catalogue of tracks now that we're able to shift the live order around show by show. And recently we had taken out a few of our earlier songs, but there was a couple of shows that, you know, fans were asking for them, and when we, you know, put them in as an encore and things, and you just hear the cheer at the start, it's like, wow, this is great. So, you know, there's things we put back in the set, and so it keeps us on our toes of like, right, what's the order going to be this time, and is it going to suit that venue and things like that. So yeah.
Oh wow, you considered the venue as well?
Yeah.
Oh wow, okay.
Because basically we're entertainers, right? We're not at a point here where we've got, you know, 10,000 people who will just love whatever it is that we deliver to them. They're like, oh God, that, you know, that demo that you released on tape back in, you know, 2018, I can't believe they played it. We're not at that level, unfortunately.
But even if you were, there is, I mean, if you've ever, have you ever seen David Byrne's TED Talk on the architecture of sound? So one of my degrees is in architecture, and so I was like really into like, you know, space and design. And David Byrne had a TED Talk where he talked about, starts out with like similar species of birds in different parts of the world have different bird song, and he said because the song responds to the environment. And then he goes into Gregorian chants in Gothic cathedrals down to the Ramones and CBGBs to arena rock. He said you can tell where they made the music because it only sounds good in a space that looks like this. And he said, like, if you were to take the Ramones and you put them into an arena, it doesn't sound right. It just wouldn't. Their sound works in an enclosed space, and those songs mean something in that space. But like, so you could totally see where there's certain songs, like, depending on the size of the venue, you're like, this is too intimate of a venue for this song. And so we're gonna rock out on this because or, you know, this is a large venue. We're going to bring the loud stuff out. And like, I could totally see you playing with that because it is how you created the music in some ways.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of exactly it. And I think my slight fixation with the cinematic angle of it is, how is this being perceived? If I was walking into this, what is the vibe that I'm getting of this? Is this like you were saying, like a gritty underground, you know, dive bar where everyone is packed in like sardines and just going mental? Or is this like, you know, a balmy summer's evening where people are on quite a different level and you can play some of the sort of, I don't know, the lounge jazz. Like, you know, and it's about that. It's about
EP.
I think a lot of a lot of the most, for me, a lot of the most satisfying things to see, to watch, to experience are things where there's part of my body which goes, I kind of knew that was going to happen. There's an expectation which has been built in me, whether it's visually, whether it's sonically, and then it resolves. And I think, yeah, that's how I imagined it would go, whether it's that chord change, whether it's that color palette, whether it's that change of shot or change of set. I just think that makes sense.
Mhm.
And so looking at it like that, it's just going
like instinctive almost.
Yeah. And then just trying to deliver that. And not everyone is going to like it, and that's okay.
No, but those who do will buy the next album. Like it just becomes like there's a thing in marketing. I think it's Kevin Kelly is the author, wrote a book called 1,000 True Fans. If you have 1,000 true fans who will buy whatever it is you put out, you will make a living for yourself, because he said that's all you need. And like you don't need to go viral. You need 1,000 people who love everything that you ever put out. And that's the extent of it. And so each show you collect another one of those thousands. So speaking of, like you were talking about, like with the encores, Scott, like I love to asking musicians this, because I will never experience this in my life because I don't do this. But like when the crowd starts singing your song for the first time, like what was that feeling like? When you're like, oh shit, like people who showed up here actually know my music and are singing it back to us.
Yeah, it's just insane. There's been quite a few shows over this year, maybe into last year as well, when, as I say, there's like, yeah, fans, people we don't know, but coming, you see them like faces right at the front, and we've said after, like, do you see people like singing? And even some new tracks that we're going to be releasing over the coming months, where they've maybe been to a show, they've put a video on Instagram and they've been able to watch it again or whatever, and then the next time you see them, they're singing it, and it's like, we've only played that once, but it's amazing.
I mean, that's a sign of success in itself, right? Like,
Yeah.
how cool is that?
I mean, it's phenomenal. And I think the one thing I really like about everyone who's involved is there's still that element of like surprise, like when someone comes up to us and is like, I heard you guys, and we don't know them, and they're just like, I love that. And it's like, that's amazing. Like it's phenomenal, like, because we know, like, as people who've gone to a huge amount of gigs ourselves, what it's like to walk away from a gig going, oh my God,
that was amazing.
Yeah. So to be able to provide that in whatever small way to someone else, it's kind of like we've done what we set out to do.
Yeah.
I did that once. I did that once when I was traveling. I was down in Virginia, and I was there to go visit architecture. And there was an old theater. It was a singer-songwriter for $25. I'm like, I'll pay $25 to see the inside of this theater. And now, like, when he comes to town, I go to all, like, he's a guy, I buy his albums whenever they come out. Like, it's just one of those things. Like, but I went in because I liked Josh Ritter.
Josh Ritter.
Yeah.
I'm gonna investigate. I'm curious.
But he's one of those guys. He has an enthusiasm about his show, and I'm like, oh, I really like his music. And I looked it up, and I'm like, okay, like I'm into this. And so he's a guy that, like, because I am not in my 20s like you guys. You get to a certain age, and being exposed to new music becomes more difficult. Like, you get rooted in the stuff that you listen to. I grew up with hip hop and like 90s hip hop and grunge. And that was kind of like my musical imprint. So a lot of things were derivatives of that. So like getting introduced to new music became much more difficult. I try to be open to it, but it becomes harder as you get older, because you have an imprint of music, because that's what you were when you were in your late teens,
But I mean, that in itself is, I experienced that when we started writing. Whenever I'd written on my own, especially the arrangements, everything, all the melodies. And writing with Scott and Andreas and the rest of the band, because when we start rehearsing, they pitch in with new ideas as well. Heavily uncomfortable, because they'd make suggestions about things which I was like, yeah, no, but it goes like this. They'd be like, why don't you try that? And I'd be like, okay. And I'd be like, and I'd say to like Scott, I'd be like, look, great, I'm gonna sit on this for a bit and just like basically come to terms with it. So it's really helped me expand my idea of how you write a song. Because I get really fixed, I get really set, because I'm like, I know what works, I know what I like, I know how these. So, and then I think you run the risk, or I ran the risk of becoming quite close-minded in my approach.
Mhm. Now,
Yeah.
how do you guys ever go through like exercises where, like, from a creative standpoint, like, and that's in any creative field, you can, when humans are stressed, we go back to what we know, because at least if it's painful, we still know what the pain is. But in creativity, sometimes it's like, I just got to do something that's like, do you ever bring in like foreign instruments, like, just, yeah, we're going to do a synth on this and we're just going to figure it out, like, just to break our creativity? Like, do you ever start to play with wild, outside the box music just to kind of see, is there something we can do with this? Yeah. Is that an exercise you guys have been through yet, or you're not, or you haven't reached that fulcrum where you're like, I need to break my mental space right now?
We have a track that's got a shitload of percussion, which was fun for me.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think there are a few songs of ours which are, super simple, the same thing all the way through pretty much. And it works for certain songs, but when we're, writing new stuff, just, we kind of know that, oh, this song, we need to be different, whether that's the structure or with some instruments and things. And we have been over time just like, yeah, we've got our original or initial sound, but we're trying to develop, different sounds, whether it's different, sounds on the keys, strings, organs, different guitar pedals, just, yeah, different ways of recording things. But yeah, I think structurally has been quite a bigger part of when we're, doing something a bit different. That's not like, you hear something on the radio and it, exactly when it's going to change and what it's going to do, but
Mhm.
the songs that we're purposely like try and shift it so that it kind of takes you off guard.
Yeah, and I think there was one period that we went through where I mean, especially Scott and I, we just sat down and we just said, let's write songs where I don't have to play the guitar as well.
Yeah.
So again, just cutting out instruments, creating, because it's I think a lot of especially with our approach when we were first writing, it was what can we add in? What can we add in? And then it was like, oh, actually, what can we take out? Because the
Yeah.
thing is about that space though, is it's terrifying.
Yeah, no, there was a band, I want to say it was the Mountain Goats, and he has a very unique, like his first albums, like, were literally him recording into a boombox, and then he released that, very, but it was all very guitar, like, he always wrote on the guitar, and he came out with an album that was like, his whole thing was, no one is going to touch a guitar on this entire album. We're going to work around it and figure it out. And that was like, oh, that's an interesting way to, like, yeah, but like, yeah, but that band is at the point where it's like their 10th album. Like, yeah, Mountain Goats fans are going to buy it regardless. But it was like, I read that, I thought, what a wild, like, thing to take something that's so signature to your sound and say, we're going to remove that entire instrument for every song on this album, and then we're going to figure out how do we fill that sound in later. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I think we're quite lucky at the moment. It's a shame he's not here, but our guitarist Andreas is a sort of endless fountain of weird noise.
that's awesome.
Yeah, so
And
it's
that's
part of his
music.
yeah.
And
So
just going back to, sorry, go on, carry on.
it's he's forever just going, I made this, listen to it, and it's just a strange cocktail of like midnight noise. And then it's like,
Okay.
can we do anything with it? And then he goes, I'll try and figure out kind of how we can play it. And then
And then you do it. There's so much more that goes into music. And I think if you're not a musician, you just assume that you just get together, write a few lyrics, and then bash
it's
some
not all,
instruments out. And there's so much more construct and meaning and structure behind each song that I don't think people realise.
yeah, it's not all just about having like great trousers on.
Right. Right. I
Just
mean,
going back to what you
wouldn't it be
said,
easier if it were like, just like, Hi, can I have the rock star outfit? Like I plan to be a rock star and I just need you just go into like a store and like, I just need this outfit and then I'm gonna go play at this club now. Like, is that cool?
Yeah,
Like
manifest.
put that on and suddenly you're amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
10 years training in one outfit. Just going back to what you said about you felt as you said about at some point all your friends were like gone off to get real jobs. How do you navigate that? Do you have a supportive family? Have they ever said, or do you ever feel the pressure to go and get a normal job, whatever that is nowadays? Yeah, how do you guys kind of navigate that? Because music is like any creative industry, it can be hard and it's not always stable and things like that. So talk to us about that.
And look, the truth is that I have to work as well. I have to earn money. It's we're not at a stage yet where I can. I mean, I could not do other work and live off what we earn. If I'm happy to eat nothing and maybe die tomorrow, but it kind of gets in the way of other creative exploits. So yeah, I think all it comes down to is I know what it's like to not do this. I know what it's like to not play music, and I'm not willing to do that.
I love that response. I think when you're a creative person, whatever field that may be, you have that urge and that need, and if it's not kind of scratched, then you feel like, oh, what am I doing? So I completely get that, and I love that answer.
Yeah, I mean,
right, guys,
and I've got Scott, who's super encouraging.
Right, I was gonna say, like, because that's the other thing, like, for having the band, at the very least, you found your people. Like you guys found each other. So everybody's gonna go through the emotional roller coaster, but like hopefully you guys offset each other. Like, you know what? I get it, but like we're gonna create today. And so like we're just gonna like figure it out. Like it's
I think when we were talking earlier about when we started and we were like, right, first gig, let's go. And then everyone got plunged into lockdown. It was like, it's so annoying, frustrating, and just, we were eager to like be in rehearsal rooms every other day with each other. Did a lot of, as I say, writing over video calls, but there was the other element of like, not hanging out with each other, because we're all like best mates, and even just like meeting up for a coffee or anything as simple as that is another part of why like this is all enjoyable, because we all get on and it's great to see each other.
And I mean that in itself is so key. Sorry, Steph, I was just going to say, it's when we first started this, we were like, we need to make sure that we kind of get on with each other, because
massively.
we're gonna spend a huge amount of time with each other, hopefully, and also like there's a lot of stuff where I'll write something and then someone will turn around and be like, no.
That I could see where that dynamic, because each of you is creating a piece of art in of itself and you're trying to put it together. And so each component is a personal reflection. And like to be able to separate that and say, like Jazz, you were saying before, like, I'm just gonna sit with that, as opposed to like, I'm putting this in. I mean, you guys are just gonna have to deal with this. Like,
yeah. And we've got quite a good setup around it, because I think what we say is if this is a hill you're gonna die on, great. Like you said, you can't have them like every 30 seconds throughout a track. But if you want this, if you want this solo, if you want this change, if you want this beat, then great. But also like, and it's how I think, like Scott was saying, how everything that we've written has gotten better and better. It's because we've done this. We've challenged each other around what we're making. So to prevent ourselves, I think, from kind of getting lazy around the way that we create new stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's coming up. Oh no, it is. It's 3 minutes past 8. So we will round it up here, because I say this to all our guests, but when we first started, me and John used to rabbit on and on and on. So we try to keep it within an hour. But it's been so lovely and really insightful, actually, about your processes and your music and stuff. So where can people find you? If they want to look you up, where can we find you?
But if you want to look me up at my home address, I'm not going to put that on the internet. But we're open to fan mail.
We're just gonna have creepy people outside just singing songs at your window. Like, what is going on here?
The sorts of fan mail that we're open to are life-size cardboard cutouts of yourselves, which you can send to us. Just let us know. You can contact us through Instagram. If you have one of those. Otherwise, our music's it's on YouTube, it's on Spotify, it's on Apple Music, it's on Amazon Music, all the appropriate streaming services we've hoard ourselves out to.
Yeah. You can buy the merch on
merch on what, sorry?
Bandcamp.
Okay. Oh, that's cool. And your Instagram and social handles are Modern Guilt, right?
Modern Guilt Official. Yeah.
Just in case there's an unofficial Modern Guilt.
Modern Guilt unofficial. Well, thank you so much for your time,
that'll actually
guys.
that'll be like the fan page that somebody creates, like, you know.
I'm here for it. I'm super here for it.
Yeah.
Like, even if it's just weird with, like, you know, photos of that people have snuck of us on the tube. Like, I'm here for it.
I mean, you know, what could be better, like, as a creative, that, like, you spawn like some sort of like meme page dedicated to you, and it's just not even like, it's still images with memes, and you just go, you know what, we're memes now, and that's awesome.
What I said earlier about our goal eventually, I think that is it. You've hit the nail on the head.
Yeah. It's that, and then Glastonbury
underneath.
Okay.
Yeah.
No. Well, until someone puts a photo up of you on the count of you, like, asleep or something in your house.
Yeah, I'll panic at that point.
Where did they get a night vision camera? Like, what is that like?
Yeah. I would have so many other questions at that point. Yeah. And also, mad respect.
Yeah, that's you know, sometimes you gotta respect the hustle. You know?
Yeah, that's a level of commitment.
Good effort.
Yeah.
We're not encouraging this, by the way, if anyone's listening.
No, not at all. For legal purposes, this is all a joke.
Yeah.
Cool.
Guys,
Well,
thank you so much. Really,
like,
it's a real treat to be asked.
Nice talking to
Yeah,
you.
this is fantastic. I really enjoyed, like, hearing about your process. It's a lot of fun, and I hope you guys do make it to all those places, and I hope you guys make it here.
Too.
You know, I hope to see you live here at one of these venues over on my side.
And
John,
I can
lovely
vouch
to meet
as well that you are amazing live, you guys. Like, as I said, you come alive on stage. It's almost like, because I obviously spoke to you and you guys were quite calm and like just like having a little chin wag, and then you get on stage and you were like, I can't explain it. Just stage presence, you guys. Just go and see them.
Steph, thank you so much.
Wait, one last question, because I've always wondered this. How much do you practice in front of a mirror to see, like, how do you look when you're singing and playing, so that how the audience will see you?
So I don't have a full length mirror in my house.
Okay.
So actually, surprisingly little. What I do though is when we rehearse, I get really into it, because it's like, this is not just a rehearsal for like how it sounds. This is also a rehearsal for how I might perform it.
Right.
That's very true.
Yeah. So they have to put up with me really, you know, getting weirdly into a rehearsal on a Monday night.
And I'm sat behind. So.
Yeah, but I think you've really nailed how you sit on that chair. I think it's, yeah, well done.
Yeah.
Well, you got to get one of those. Like, down the road, you got to get one of those. You guys remember, like, the Tommy Lee kit? Like, it would lift them up off the stage and spin around.
If we ever have a budget when we tour, the whole thing is going on that.
Like, everybody, the entire band descends from wires, like, down, like.
Well, yeah. Sorry, Steph. Is that it? Are we out of time?
No, well, it's not going to cut off or anything. I was just going to say, and if you ever need an album cover, let me know.
Nice one.
Thank you so much.
Right, we'll let you get off anyway, guys.
Thank you.
Nice one.
Thank you
Cheers.
so much.